Putin's decision to shoot for gold could move global energy trade away from the US dollar. In this video, I will provide you in-depth analysis as to how Putin's decision could single-handedly crash the global economy and reshape the financial market for years to come. So make sure to watch this video in its entirety and you will know the story, how it ends. My name is Dr. David Waralu, and you are, of course, watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
We've seen a lot of asset classes take a hit the way that people thought it might have done. Where's it going to go from now? Who's buying and who's selling?
G7 countries are planning to ban the import of Russian gold. The idea is to starve the Russian economy. How will this impact other countries?
Russia has become economically isolated from the West. Illiquid gold could be one of Putin's few remaining silver linings.
The world is random, meaningless, chaos. Or is it? How do some of the best, wealthiest, and most powerful people seem to know what's coming before it happens? Well, one way is that they create the circumstances in their favor, but the other is that they know how to read the world's stage and spot patterns and trends in key areas. They don't get lost in the overwhelm of endless information. They know what's important to pay attention to using their own formulas, and most importantly, they know where to put that information to actually make it usable. Would you like to be able to do the same thing? Well, we have a course that teaches you to do that exact same thing. It's called No Nonsense Politics. So if you want the leg up that some of the world's brightest have, as well as an online community of people who think for themselves just like you, check it out. Link in the description box below.
In a powerful and disruptive move, Russian President Vladimir Putin will offer a discount to any country that pays for Russian oil with gold. This will destroy the petrodollar. This move puts pressure on OPEC, oil-producing exporting countries, to do the same. And given how Saudi Arabia despised Joe Biden, it's a foregone conclusion where things are headed. A few months ago, US officials publicly warned India against new and enhanced trading arrangements with Russia. At that time, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov reminded the Prime Minister Modi that such arrangements predated the Ukraine crisis. The fact that Prime Minister Modi met Lavrov for 40 minutes and met no other representatives from any other countries says something about India's priorities in the rapidly changing geoeconomic landscape. Interestingly, the common payment system based on local currencies has been discussed in BRICS for some years, but not pursued seriously on the ground. The Ukraine crisis has given a boost to the idea of moving away from the US dollar in regional trade. Former RBI Governor Rajan recently said that the US ban on dealing with the Russian central bank willy-nilly creates anxiety among nations about too much dependence on the US dollar. Rajan said there could be a US president tomorrow who might resort to drastic sanction simply to coerce. Could this become the new normal in the deglobalization? I'll let you think about that. Russia has tapped into this sentiment. Putin has in fact decided to save the ruble by linking its value to gold. By pegging 5,000 rubles to 1 gram of gold, Putin is seeking to counter the collapse of the Russian currency with the backing of gold. This is a very powerful and disruptive idea because at one stroke, a large part of the global energy trade could move away from the US dollar. And linking a currency to gold can be seen as an economically responsible act, discouraging the reckless printing of currency as the US has been doing for the last 15 years. Mind you, the Fed's balance sheet has grown from $800 billion in 2008 to nearly $8.5 trillion in 2021. A tenfold increase in the printing currency would have been impossible if the dollar was backed by gold, as it was until Richard Nixon delinked it from the bullion in 1971. Nixon closed the gold window to prevent foreign governments from selling dollars to accumulate gold as a hedge against persistent inflation in the United States. But let me provide you a historical perspective here. Accusations of the West towards Vladimir Putin, or President Putin that is, are traditionally based on the fact that he worked in the KGB, which he did, and therefore he is a cruel and immoral person. Putin is blamed for everything, but nobody ever accused Vladimir Putin of the lack of intelligence. Any accusation against President Putin only emphasizes his ability for quick analytical thinking and making clear and balanced political and economic decisions. Often, Western media compares his ability with the ability of a grandmaster conducting a public chess seminar. Recent developments in the US economy and the West in general allows us to conclude that in this part of the assessments of President Putin's personality, Western media are absolutely right. This leads me to ask the following questions. What is the true tragic predicament in the West in which it finds itself? And why all Western media and leading Western economists are silent about this? So let's try to understand the essence of current economic events in the context of global economy, setting aside the factors of morality, ethics, and geopolitics. Last time, under President Reagan, such actions of the West's lowering of oil prices led to success and the collapse of the USSR. But history does not repeat itself at all times. This time, things are different for the West. Putin's response to the West resembles both chess and judo when the strength used by the enemy is used against him, but with minimal costs to the strength and resources of the defender. President Putin's real policies are not public. Therefore, Putin's policy largely has always focused not so much on the effect, but on the efficiency. Very few people understand what President Putin is doing at the moment, and almost no one understands what he will do in the future. No matter how strange it may seem, but the fact now is President Putin is selling oil, Russian oil and gas only for physical gold. President Putin is not shouting about it all over the world. And of course, he still accepts US dollars as an intermediate means of payment. But he immediately exchanges all these dollars obtained from the sale of oil and gas for physical gold. It is obvious that in terms of sanctions by the Western world, this statement is addressed to the BRICS countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And first of all, to China. For China, Russia's willingness to pay for goods with Western gold is very convenient. And here is why. China recently announced that it will cease to increase its gold and currency reserves dominated in the US dollar. Considering the growing trade deficits between the United States and China, which, by the way, the current difference is 5 times in favor of China. The US trade deficits in goods soared to record level in 2021, topping $1 trillion. As Americans continue to spend heavily on computers, toys, bicycles, clothing, pharmaceutical, and other goods made in foreign factories. This does not mean that China stops selling their goods for dollars. The world media choose not to notice this grandest in the recent monetary history events. The issue is not that China literally refuses to sell its goods for US dollar. China, of course, will continue to accept US dollars as an intermediate means of payments for its goods. But having taken dollars, China will immediately get rid of them and replace them with something else in the structure of its gold and currency reserves. As a result, China will replace all the dollars that it will receive from its goods, not only from the US, but from all over the world, with something else, not to increase their gold currency reserves dominated in US dollars. And here is an interesting question you need to ask. What will China replace all the trade dollars with? What currency or an asset? Most analysis of the current monetary policy of China shows that most likely the dollars coming from trades, or a substantial chunk of them, China will quietly replace, and actually is already replacing with gold. Are we witnessing the end of the dollar era, you may ask? In this respect, the solitaire of Russia-China relations is extremely successful for both Moscow and Beijing. Russia buys goods from China directly for gold at its current price, while China buys Russian energy resources for gold at its current price. In this Russia-China setting, there is a place for everything: Chinese goods, Russian energy resources, and gold as a means of mutual payment. Only the US dollar has no place at this setting. And this is not surprising, because the US dollar is not a Chinese product nor a Russian energy resource. It is only an intermediate financial instrument of settlement and an unnecessary intermediary. And it is customary to exclude unnecessary intermediaries from the interaction of two independent business partners. So the Western economic establishment can see and understand the essence of the situation. Leading Western economists are certainly aware of the severity and are aware of the severity of the predicaments and hopelessness of the situation the Western world finds itself in. In Putin's economic gold trap, after all, since the Bretton Woods agreement, we all know the golden rule. Who has more gold sets the rules. But everyone in the West is silent about it. Silent because no one knows now how to get out of this situation. The US is anxious that this talk of a local and regional currency payment system, or the gold-based trading system proposed by Russia, could challenge the dollar and nullify the effect of its harsh sanctions in the short to medium term. However, Even if a broad solution is found to the Ukraine crisis, the idea of shifting away from the dollar as a dominant trading currency may persist, and that is what Washington's real nightmare is. After all, even China nurtured the aspiration of making the yuan a more widely accepted regional, if not world currency. The Ukraine war could be an inflection point for many radical changes in the geoeconomics governing the multipolar world. Reimagining a new form of payment systems is particularly relevant for trade in energy and food. And energy and food security are common concerns to three main countries: India, China, and Russia. So here's my conclusion for you. If you explain to Western public all the details of the looming economic disaster, the public will ask the supporters of the petrodollar world the most terrible questions, which will sound something like this. How long will the West be able to buy oil and gas from Russia in exchange for physical gold? The next question is, what will happen to the US petrodollar after the West runs out of physical gold to pay for Russian oil, gas, and uranium, as well as pay for Chinese goods? No one in the West today can answer these seemingly simple questions, and this is called checkmate, ladies and gentlemen. The game is over.